You know, we often hear about these amazing breakthroughs in drug discovery, right? A new molecule looks great in the lab.
Yeah, that eureka moment.
Exactly. But getting from that tiny lab success to the medicine you actually pick up, that's a whole other story.
A much longer, much more complex story.
And one of the really critical pinch points is scaling up, taking that lab process and making it work reliably, huge scale.
That's where the real engineering and science challenges often kick in. Yeah.
And that's what we're diving into today, the common hurdles in that pharmaceutical scale-up phase.
Right. And for you, the learner, who wants the key insights without getting lost in the weeds, think of this as your guide to the main obstacles.
We've looked through various sources on drug development, manufacturing.
Could really pull out the essentials on these scale-up challenges. Our mission: shine a light on these common issues, talk about why understanding the deep science, the mechanistic evaluation, is so vital, and also touch on why sometimes you don't hear much about these scale-up details in the success stories.
Okay, let's get into it. That first big leap, small lab gear to massive industrial kit. It sounds simple, just bigger, but I guess it's not.
Oh, not at all. It's a fundamental shift. What happens nicely in a little flask behaves, well, very differently in a giant stainless steel reactor.
How so?
You're dealing with completely different scales of, say, mixing. Getting everything evenly blended in a 1,000-liter tank is way harder than stirring a beaker.
Right, like stirring coffee versus stirring a swimming pool.
Exactly. And that affects reactions. Same goes for heat transfer, getting heat in or out efficiently. And mass transfer, how things move around in the mixture. These physical factors change drastically.
And that change can cause problems.
Big problems. It can affect reaction speed, yield, and critically the formation of unwanted byproducts or impurities.
Impurities. I was going to ask about that. Keeping the drug pure when you make tons of it must be a huge focus.
It's absolutely paramount.
Yeah.
An impurity that's barely detectable at the gram scale in the lab, it can become a significant issue when you're producing kilograms or tons.
Because even a tiny percentage adds up to a lot.
Precisely. That's why impurity qualification is such a big deal. You have to know what impurities are there, how much, and critically prove they're safe at those levels. Our sources really stress this.
So a process that looked super clean initially might reveal some hidden issues when you blow it up to size.
It can happen, which leads to the next point.
Yep.
Process robustness.
What do you mean?
Meaning, how reliable and repeatable is the process? Does it work consistently, batch after batch, even with the slight variations that inevitably happen in large-scale manufacturing?
Because perfect lab conditions are hard to replicate in a factory.
Very hard. Temperature fluctuations, slight differences in mixing energy, tiny variations in raw materials. A process needs to be robust enough to handle these without the quality suffering. Reproducibility is key.
And you mentioned raw materials. I imagine just getting enough stuff is a challenge, let alone ensuring it's all the same quality.
You've hit on another major hurdle. Moving from buying small amounts of highly pure lab chemicals to sourcing industrial quantities. Suppliers might differ. Batch-to-batch variability within a supplier can exist.
And this bumps up against regulations, I assume.
Directly. GMP good manufacturing practice requirements are very strict about controlling and testing starting materials. You need rigorous checks on everything coming in.
It sounds like a massive logistical and quality control exercise even before you start the main process.
Yeah, it really is. And then there's controlling the process itself while it's running.
Right. Monitoring huge reactors must be way more complex than watching a small flask.
Absolutely. Keeping parameters like temperature, pressure, pH consistent throughout a massive volume requires sophisticated process control and monitoring systems.
Is that where things like continuous manufacturing come in? I've heard about that.
That's certainly part of the drive towards it. Continuous processing, more like an assembly line, can offer tighter control and more real-time monitoring compared to traditional large batch methods. It could potentially mitigate some of these scale-up control issues.
Interesting. Okay, another practical thing. Cleaning. How do you ensure these enormous vessels are perfectly clean between batches? Contamination seems like a huge risk.
Huge risk and huge focus. Cleaning validation is a major part of GMP, like the FDA's CFR Title 21 Part 211 rules. You need validated procedures to prove equipment is cleaned effectively to prevent any carryover or microbial contamination.
Because any little bit left behind could ruin the next massive batch.
Exactly. Safety and quality depend on it.
And one last challenge area. The actual final medicine, the formulation. Does making it in bulk affect things like stability or how it works in the body?
It definitely can. The way ingredients are mixed, dried, or compressed on a large scale might differ from the lab. This could potentially affect the drug's stability over time or its bioavailability, how much actually gets absorbed.
So you might need to tweak the recipe, essentially.
Sometimes, yes, formulation adjustments might be needed. And if those changes are significant, you might need to prove the scaled-up version still behaves the same way in the body through bioequivalence studies.
Wow. Okay, so it's clear scaling up is far from simple multiplication. It introduces a whole host of new scientific and engineering problems.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to that term, mechanistic evaluation.
Right. You said understanding the mechanism is crucial. What does that really mean in this context?
It means going beyond just knowing that a process step works and understanding why it works. What are the underlying physical principles, the chemical reaction pathways, the kinetics, the thermodynamics?
So the deep science behind the recipe steps.
Exactly. Like a chef understanding why adding acid tenderizes meat, not just knowing that the recipe says to add lemon juice.
Okay, I get that. And why is that deep understanding so vital for scale up?
Because it allows you to predict how the process will behave when you change the scale. If you understand how mixing affects reaction rate, you can make informed decisions about the type of impeller and mixing speed needed in the large reactor.
Instead of just guessing or endless trial and error?
Precisely. Trial and error at large scale is incredibly expensive, time-consuming, and risky. A mechanistic understanding provides a rational basis for scale-up design and troubleshooting.
And does it help with those specific issues like impurities and consistency?
Definitely. If you understand the reaction mechanism, you can often pinpoint where impurities are likely to form and adjust conditions, temperature, pressure, region addition, to minimize them.
Ah, okay.
And it helps identify the truly critical process parameters, the factors that really impact final product quality. Understanding the mechanism helps you focus your control strategy on what matters most. That's fundamental to the quality by design, or QBD, approach.
Building quality in from the start based on science.
That's the idea.
It really sounds like that deep scientific grasp is the bedrock for navigating scale-up successfully. Which makes it interesting that, as you noted earlier, we don't always hear a lot about these scale-up journeys in published case studies. Why might that be?
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. There are probably a few reasons. One big one is likely the proprietary nature of this information.
Trade secrets, basically.
Exactly. How a company successfully scaled up its unique process. That's valuable intellectual property. Sharing detailed scale-up data and solutions could give competitors insights they wouldn't otherwise have.
Makes sense. Keep your competitive advantage.
Right. Another factor might be the focus of many publications. Often, the primary story is about the drug discovery itself, the clinical trial results proving safety and efficacy.
The headline news?
Kind of. The manufacturing details, while critical, might be seen as, well, less scientifically novel or exciting for a high-impact journal focused on clinical outcomes.
So the how we made it gets less attention than, look, it works.
Sometimes, yes. And there can also be a bit of a divide, maybe, between the discovery research and the process development or chemical engineering disciplines involved in scale-up. They might publish in different circles or focus on different aspects.
So different communities, almost.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But this lack of visibility around scale-up challenges and solutions, it does have implications.
How so?
Well, if experiences aren't shared, both the wins and, perhaps more importantly, the failures and the lessons learned, then the broader community might miss out.
Others might end up reinventing the wheel or hitting the same roadblocks.
Exactly. It can slow down overall progress. More transparency, where possible and appropriate, about scale-up experiences could arguably accelerate drug development and improve manufacturing efficiency across the industry. Sharing non-proprietary insights, common pitfalls, general strategies, that could be really beneficial.
It sounds like a more open dialogue about the nuts and bolts of getting from lab to market could lift all boats.
I think there's a strong argument for that, yes.
Okay, so wrapping this up. If we boil it down, what are the absolute key takeaways for the learner today?
First, scaling up pharmaceutical processes is complex. It involves navigating challenges with equipment translation, ensuring quality and consistency, maintaining process robustness, managing raw materials, implementing controls, ensuring sterility, and potentially reformulating. It's not just bigger.
Got it. Challenge number one. It's hard.
Yes. Second takeaway. A deep mechanistic understanding of the science behind the process is absolutely vital. It's the key to predicting issues, solving problems efficiently, and designing robust, large-scale processes.
So know your science.
Know your science. And third, while scale-up details aren't always widely shared, perhaps for valid reasons, more openness about the challenges and learnings could really help the whole field move forward faster.
Great summary. And understanding these points really gives you a much fuller picture of drug development, doesn't it? It highlights the incredible complexity behind ensuring we have reliable, high-quality medicines available.
Absolutely. It's a critical, often underappreciated part of the journey.
Which leads to a final thought for the learner to maybe chew on. As manufacturing tech keeps advancing, we mentioned continuous processing. For instance, how might these traditional scale-up challenges change? Will they shrink or just transform into different kinds of challenges in the future?
That's a great question. How will new technologies reshape this landscape? Definitely something to watch as pharmaceutical manufacturing continues to evolve.